Hey folks. So to kind of add to the vlog series that I'm doing about Counter-Strike Global Offensive, I definitely have a series that is still running where I talk about North American Counter-Strike and roster changes and team and player analysis from different events and things like that. And that's definitely still a portion of my vlog series that I'll continue, but I wanted to expand out and do some broader topics as well that affect more than just North American Counter-Strike, but talk about Counter-Strike as a whole. I kind of want to expand a bit. And so part of that is going to be another series of vlogs that I'll do where I'll just be doing analysis of patches, and Valve updates and kind of, commenting on these updates and things like that. And I won't do it for every single update to the game, but obviously the ones that are more major, that have a bigger impact, that are really big and vast changes are ones that I definitely want to focus on. And also in this first one that I'm going to do, I'm also just going to kind of rant a bit about what I think about Valve's mentality towards updates and the timeliness of updates and fixes and just some of the different issues that I'm kind of having, or that I'm not just having by myself, but that I'm seeing from the community at large, from other analysts and commentators and professional players. And so I just kind of want to voice that a bit here. And so part of this is going to be a bit of a rant and tangent type deal as well. But basically, like I said, I'm just going to start, talking about Valve updates to the game and changes to the game and stuff like that, as well as part of my CSGO vlog series that I'm doing. So the update that I'll talk about is the most recent one, which comes from March 31st of 2015, or at least this is the latest, biggest patch. I know there's been like some small like hot fixes and stuff that released in the beginning of April, but this was the really big update that we've had recently to the game. Now, gameplay-wise, we did see Train come in for nuke. Now, whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing, whether or not nuke needed to go, didn't need to go, I know a lot of people were wanting to see nuke go just because they felt it was way too CT-sided, and therefore, we needed to bring in a map where there were more opportunities for the map to be more balanced, as far as like having hasts that were closer or giving terrorists more opportunities to get rounds, what have you, or just bringing Train back, because Train used to be a very popular map in Counter-Strike, very, very popular. The CSGO versions of Train have never been very good. There's been like 3 different versions of Train that have been battling for prominence in the scene, between the Volcano edition and Valve's version and the standard edition and all these other things. There's always been kind of a fight for which Train was the best, and I think that you could take elements probably from each Train and probably have come up with something, but Valve has done just like a complete total remake of Train. I don't really know how I feel about it because I haven't seen it played, so I have no idea what to really think about it, because like I said, I haven't really seen any competition on it yet. And so until I see it played at a professional level and I see how the meta develops and things like that, I'm really not going to have much of an opinion on the map, because right now I just don't know that much about it. I'm not seeing it played. I will say that at the very least, it seems like Valve are listening to some players who are already trying to commentate on it. So I know Adren has made videos already talking about Train, and this is just his initial reactions to Train coming back to the active map pool. There hasn't been really any tournament play on Train yet that I'm aware of, really. And Adrian was already making videos about things that need to be changed to the map to make it ready to even start competing on. So obviously, as you see it played, you come up with ideas on things that need to be changed and tweaked. But sometimes things are just very blatantly obvious before you even step foot on the map on things that need to be taken care of. And so people like Adren and Cotton and some of these other guys have already, kind of tried to do that, and it seems like Valve's been pretty receptive and has already made some changes to the map even before before competition has started on it. So I guess that's somewhat, encouraging that we're already seeing Valve being open-minded to these map tweaks. And I think in general, Valve has always had a decent mentality when it comes to map tweaks based on community feedback. I think it's more gameplay changes that have been kind of the issue that most people have been fighting with, between buffs and nerfs for certain guns and movement and smokes and different things like that. That seems to be the area of the game where there seems to be the most headbutting between the community and Valve's mentality, whereas it seems like map-wise, Valve seems to be much more responsive when it comes to maps. Now, whether the timeliness is what you like, I don't know, but it just seems like they're more willing to adapt and make changes to maps based on pro feedback in comparison to gameplay changes where they're a bit more strict about it. But like I said, don't really know what to think about Train as a map. Maybe pulling nuke wasn't necessary. I know it doesn't get played as much. I know people complain about it a lot being too CT sided, but nuke has always been that way throughout the history of the game. You always knew that nuke was going to be CT sided. You always knew that, you know, it was very likely that CTs were going to get definitely at least 10 rounds, if not 11 or 12. Almost every time you play it, that's just what you knew. But you knew you would get that side next, and you would have that opportunity to get those double-digit rounds and make the comeback. Or, you know, because you're playing a map pool and you have, you know, vetoes and picks and stuff like that, you're still able, even if nuke is a bad map for you and you get wrecked by a team that's a really CT-sided team, maybe you get your map next, or you get a map that is slightly more T-favored. And you know, Thorn did a big video about map balance already, so I'm not going to go too heavy into it, but he definitely makes some valid points in that map balance video. You should definitely check it out. I'll link it in the description. And it kind of talks about how maybe it's just not necessary to get rid of a heavily CT-sided map just because that map may not seem as balanced as you want it to be. If the map pool itself is balanced and you're using a very good you know, veto pick system and best of threes or something like that, then it shouldn't really matter as long as you have a balanced map pool. Of course, when you're playing best of ones in online league play for qualifications for LANs, or in group play of majors even where you're playing best of ones, it's a little bit more difficult because you're not getting that map pool balance. So that could be where it's still an issue to have like a map that's just too heavily one-sided, especially when you're not going to get the star on that side first, so you give that other team that big advantage. So there is still some argument and debate to be had there, but in general, I'm not necessarily certain that removing nuke completely was the right choice, but we'll just have to see. There also has been apparently this nerf to stacking over smokes and to being able to look over smokes and peek into people, and you're hard to see. I think probably one of the most popular positions this was used was actually at Banana on Inferno, where CTs would, you know, throw smokes from CT spawn at the bottom of Banana, and then right there at T stairs where like a flower pot type thing is, you'd see players do like a double stack over the smoke to actually, you know, peak players that are actually pushing Banana to car are playing that corner or something like that. That's probably the most popular place I've seen this type of stack over smoke being used, and apparently that's going to be nerfed now, because in the past it used to be very hard to see when you were the boosted player to the player that was getting shot at, like at car or whatever. So apparently they've done some type of nerfing to this. I'm not really sure that was necessary, to be honest, just because, you know, the game itself mechanically has always been kind of CT-sided. I mean, there's been videos talking about this. I think Thorn either did a video or article about this, where you're thinking about how, yes, there's Peeker's advantage in the game, but that just flips over to the CT side on retakes. So CT retakes are very powerful because of the Peeker's advantage. You know, the strength of smoke grenades, you know, blasting as long as they do and how big they are, you know, really holding off terrorists, limiting their options, and you can kill so much clock with proper smoke grenade placement. So, you know, it just seems like the game is already, you know, generally drifted towards CTs, and a play like this, boosting over a smoke, was something that finally gave terrorists an option to kind of counter that and try to make something happen in a tough situation where pressing through a smoke is very risky, and mechanically the maps are sometimes CT-sided, and then the game itself can be mechanically CT-sided in many areas, and this seemed like a way to kind of finally counter that as terrorists. Now you've eliminated that, and so it just seems like it may have been unnecessary to eliminate an option that terrorists finally had to counter some of the CT strengths and give them something. So I'm not really sure if I really agree with that. Now, I know that this patch also tweaked tagging and increased tagging values. This is good. You know, finally now people are going to be punished for making these quick shoulder peeks. If you can actually catch them with a bullet, it'll slow them down from being able to hide right away. So with movement accuracy and with these quick shoulder peeks that players could make, you know, tagging is finally a way to kind of punish that. I know tagging's been around for a while, but it seems like tagging's now being increased. I haven't seen enough games to know how much of an impact tagging's really had just yet, because like I said, this update is less than a week old at this point, so I kind of want to see gameplay more before I really kind of sit down and say, okay, like, this is great. But I think increasing tagging is at least a gameplay change that should be looked at. It's a positive direction to kind of punish you know, rapid peaking and things like that, and so this could be very good, and I think most people's reactions have been, okay, this can be, you know, quite good. They also increased the price of the Sonstem 4 from 3,100 to 3,200. I'm not really sure why. I mean, I know that the Silenced M4 is getting used more than the unsilenced M4, so I know that in general people felt like it was getting overused, so maybe, nerfing the price was going to allow for some more balance between which M4 was used more than the other. I don't think it really matters. There's definitely inherent disadvantages to using the Silenced M4, such as, total ammo, only 20 bullets in a clip. Different things like that were already making it a slight disadvantage to the other M4 that had more bullets, so you could spray more and hold down your spray longer and things like that. But I know that the M4 silenced accuracy was really, really high, and that's why a lot of people were kind of trending more towards that because the accuracy was just better. It was like shooting a laser, I think some people used to compare it to. So I just don't know if the price was necessary. I mean, I think that each gun had its pros and cons already at the same price, and so I'm not really sure that you needed to, nerf the price of the Silenced M4 by $100, but it's not that crazy of a price change, so maybe it won't have that much of an effect. I think I have seen some instances where some players are moving more towards the unsilenced M4 now, and so maybe this is what Valve wants. I'm not sure if that's really the correct mentality to have or not, but to me, that's not that crazy of a change, I guess. Let's talk about really the biggest changes in this patch, and this is going to get into some more of the general talk that I have about Valve's mentality towards gameplay patches. And of course, the first big part of this is the supposed nerfing of the Tech 9. Now, let's be honest, the Tech 9 has been overpowered since probably that big accuracy and accuracy buff it got, as well as a recoil reduction buff that it got back in September of 2014. I think it was September 17, 2014 is when we saw the Tech 9 get some of its initial buffs to make it the OP gun that it still is probably today. Now, granted, no one really noticed this in September because everyone was still really using the CZ, and it wasn't until, mid-December and into early January that gun finally got nerfed properly. So for the first 2 or 3 months that the Tech 9 was at this OP state, it wasn't being used because the CZ was still such a crazy viable option until it received its nerf in December. So there's this 3-month window where the Tech 9 probably was really OP, just no one was seemingly noticing it yet. So in general, I would say the Tech 9 has been OP since mid-September of 2014. So that means it's been this way now for 7 months, I guess, because now we're almost to mid-April. So, I mean, you count that down, that's still a pretty long period of time where this Tech 9 has been really overpowered. Maybe it wasn't abused until December, so maybe really it's only been 4 months that it's been really OP. But still, that's a long-standing amount of time where this gun has been OP, and people have been calling for it to be nerfed for ages, and it hasn't been tweaked, okay? And this isn't just the first time that Valve has done this. Obviously, the CZ lasted for a very long time before it finally got properly nerfed. So the CZ was introduced to the game on February 12th of 2014. Okay, so this is over a year ago. A year and 2 months ago was when the CZ first got introduced to the game. And in all honesty, the gun has been OP ever since it got introduced to the game. Now, granted, it may have taken some time for people to take notice on how OP it was. Maybe it took a couple of months of gameplay, maybe even less than that, to really understand that this gun was just really OP. At this time, it was still $300 when it first got introduced to the game. It was a replacement for the P250, and so it was $300. So it was even more OP than it was like during its heyday, I guess you could say, at the very beginning. Like I said, maybe it takes some time to notice, but still, ever since it got introduced to the game, it was OP. And granted, I can understand when you're introducing a new gun, a completely new item, it may take you some time to tweak it and get it where you need it to be, but it should have been pretty obvious that the CZ was OP after maybe a couple of months. So let's just say by April of 2014, if you released it in February, you should have probably already noticed that there was some issues with the gun being too OP, right? However, the gun doesn't receive any type of nerf until September of 2014, where it gets nerfed to $500, which was basically fucking nothing when it comes to nerfing. Like, that $200 really did absolutely nothing to nerf the gun. It was still used just as much. It was still exploited just as much. It really didn't make any bit of difference that you nerfed it $200. Yet, it wasn't for another 3 months, so December 10th, 2014, that it got nerfed again at all. So you let this gun run rampant from, let's say, April of 2014 to September of 2014, so like 5 months before you nerfed it at all, with a price difference, which was like applying a damp band-aid to like a wound in need of stitches. Like, it was just like, just nothing. It covered it up a bit, but did really nothing to actually stop the damage that the gun was doing to gameplay. Okay, so that's I mean, I'm being generous there. Really 7 months of time because it got introduced in February. But let's just say it took you some time to realize how bad it was. So let's just say 4 or 5 months of time before you give it the $300 or $200 price nerf. And then after that, it's another 3 months before you nerf it again. So that means that the CZ, if you go worst case scenario, was OP for like 10 months before it finally got fixed. And even if I'm being generous, it was still OP for at least 6 to 7 months before it got nerfed properly. That is way too long. That's almost a year. That is way too long for a gun to be OP, and how many tournaments that affected. I mean, that's just insane. It's mind-boggling that it took that long to fix this gun when there was so much complaint and backlash about it for such a long time. And I get, as a developer, you never want to over nerf or over buff something and just, you know, completely ruin it. But whatever. I know the gun couldn't be completely removed from the game because of skins and all these different things, but I mean, come on, this took forever. You know, finally in December it got the big nerf where it reduced the magazine size and the damage was reduced and the firing rate was reduced. It took twice as long to pull out. You know, you limited the kill reward to $100. So I would say maybe they over-nerfed it in December 10th, which is exactly why a month later, you know, the January 18th, they reverted some of these nerfs. So when it came to the fire rate, you know, the CZ was kind of reverted there at the fire rate a month later. So yeah, I mean, still though, this is just an example of how long it takes Valve to take care of something that they're getting a lot of professional, you know, feedback from that is very negative, that this gun needs to be changed, and it took that long for them to fix it, you know, between 7 and 10 months, how you want to look at it. Now let's look at the Tech 9. Like I said, it's been OP since probably about September 17th of 2014, though it probably wasn't noticed until December when, you know, people were still using the CZ so much. So worst case scenario, this gun has now been OP for about 7 months. You know, best case scenario, if you're saying, oh, well, people didn't even notice it because the CZ was being used, so you couldn't really know until the Tech 9 started getting used a lot. Okay, so people started switching to the Tech 9 probably in December of 2014 when the CZ finally got its big nerf, and it's been now running rampant for at least 4 months until they've taken any type of look at it as far as nerfing it. And to me, their nerf doesn't really matter. So they dropped, you know, the clip size from 32 bullets to 24 bullets. Who really cares? It's not as if people are really getting down to their last 8 bullets anyway to get kills. People are usually hammering out their game-breaking kills within probably the first, you know, 12 to 24 bullets anyway. So I really don't think that does anything at all. It makes no difference that you change the clip size, in my opinion. Now, granted, I will admit that nerfing the distance at which it can do damage, so the distance drop off of damage, so now you can't get one-tap headshots from as far away as you used to be able to. Yes, that is a good nerf. I mean, that does help, but I don't think that that's enough. I mean, I think that there needs to be some look at damage even more on this gun. I'm not sure what the exact fix is, but I don't think that nerfing the clip size 8 bullets and changing, you know, the headshot one-tap distance range, I don't think that those two things are enough, not by any stretch of the imagination. And so I don't see this as being taken care of. You know, this is still a problem. Now, I've heard some win today from a comment by Freiberg that because of buffing the SMG accuracy on guns such as the MP7 and the MP9 and some of these other SMGs, that, you know, this has been a nerf to the Tech 9 because now, you know, SMGs are more powerful, so you can now counter Tech 9s or whatever on second round easier with these powerful SMGs. That may be true to an extent, but to me, I shouldn't be punished for wanting to buy a Galil or AK second round or buying a FAMAS M4 second round if I have the money especially if you got a first round bomb plant and I want to go ahead and get my FAMAS or M4 because I know you're probably buying third round. I don't think I should be penalized for going for that rifle against a Tech 9. You know, granted, now you should be able to range out a Tech 9 better because of that distance drop off. But if you range yourself out, then you're putting yourself at risk of just getting smoked out, and then either you have to play through a smoke and take a risky peek through a smoke, or you have to sit back and wait and play for a retake and definitely allow a bomb plant. And then at that point, T's can hold, and then you are going to get in those close quarters battles anyway, and so that range out doesn't really have an effect. So yeah, I guess buying SMGs, which are relatively cheap, you know, $1,200 for some of them, you know, up until like, you know, $1,600 or $1,800. Yeah, it's a cheaper option, but I'm still gonna have to get rid of that SMG in a couple of rounds. And I get it. Like in Counter-Strike Source, the MP5 was bought pretty heavily second round by teams who had won to try to counter people with, you know, upgraded pistols and stuff like that. And so maybe there is something to what Freiberg's saying about this SMG buff being a counter to the Tech 9, plus the slight nerf to the Tech 9 combined with this SMG buff could be what fixes it. But I just don't see it. I think that the Tech 9 has been running rampant for way too long, almost as long as the CZ ran rampant before it was taken care of. It's almost as bad as the CZ as far as the game breakingness of the game. I don't know if that game breakingness is a word, but you get my point. It just doesn't make sense to me. It seems like it takes Valve way too long to handle these types of situations. I know you fear over buffing or over nerfing, but come on, there is a certain line that needs to be drawn on how long you let something go before you really take a look at it. Now, let's talk about the other big thing here. I didn't really talk about buffing SMGs much except for in that sense, so I think I'll just leave it at that for now. Okay, now let's look at the op being nerfed. Now, I know Thorn once again has done a full video about the op nerfing. I had already wrote the script for this video before he released that video, so I didn't know he was going to do that, basically. But I think he touched on it really well, so I'm not going to, you know, cover something that's already been covered. That's why I've made this video more broad in scope rather than just focusing on one point of the update. I will say that nerfing the op just makes no damn sense to me whatsoever. I don't think there was ever really a big call to nerf the op from the professional community. In fact, I've never really heard any call for it to be nerfed. In fact, the only thing I've ever heard is that people still hated the scope blurriness when you moved around because it's never been a part of Counter-Strike until CSGO, and so people were almost calling for like buffs to the scope of the op because the whole blurriness just was like stupid in some people's opinions. But I think people have finally just gotten used to it and given up on it and don't really care. But still, there was never any call to nerf the op from anyone that I can think of. I mean, the gun is not really exploited whatsoever. I mean, you have a very small handful of players who really break the game with the op. Very small amount, like JW, Kenny S. It's hard for me to really name anybody else who's just breaking the game with the op, so to speak. It's not even breaking the game at that point. If only a handful of people are able to exploit it and really use it to this crazy potential, well, guess what? Like, that just means they're really damn good at the game, and they found a way to use a gun so effectively, and hardly anyone else is being able to do that. If anything, that should show you that the gun is fine, because only a small group of people, only a small niche of people are able to really use it at great bounds. And so that should kind of reassure the fact that you have it where it needs to be. Double op setups are really used. You think if a gun's really broken, it would be used quite a lot. It would be used by more players. But the bottom line is that you very often only see one op setups. Yes, sure, double op setups are there, especially on CT sides, and on some maps on T side like Dust 2, you may see it. But in reality, more often than not, you either don't have an op at all, 5 rifle setup, or you only have one. If you were to look at probably all the gameplay as a whole and break it down, double op setups are pretty rare in general in comparison to single op or no op setups. And so I just don't really see why this game how this gun had to be nerfed. It just seems to me like every time Valve fixes something, so they take a step forward, they also take a step back, and it's just baffling. So for example, with the CZ, they finally took a step forward by fixing the CZ, but they took a step back because they overpowered the Tech 9. So now you're finally maybe working towards nerfing the Tech 9 with the small nerf you've done in this update, and because you're buffing SMGs, even though I'm not sure if that's really quite enough as far as nerfing Tech 9. But then, so maybe taking a step forward because you're finally at least addressing the Tech 9. But then you nerf the op. That's taking a step back, in my opinion. Like, why? Why do you need to do that? So it seems like every time Valve finally fixes something, the community is so adamant about needing to be changed. So people are up in arms about, Valve, you need to fix this, fix this. And then Valve listens for like 6 months and doesn't really do anything, then finally fixes it. And then they're like, oh, well, we fixed the problem that you had. Finally, it took us a long time, but hey, we got there. And oh yeah, by the way, we're gonna do this one thing that's completely unnecessary that you guys didn't call for at all. You know, yeah. So the trade-off of us finally fixing the game the way that you want it to be is to also destroy, you know, another element of the game or something like that. Like it's baffling to me that this whole take one step forward, take one step back type of mentality, the patches that Valve seems to be making. And I think the other big problem is I don't understand what this mentality is when they are making these changes. I could go more into why the nerf to the op doesn't make any sense, but like I said, Thorn did a whole video on it, so I'm not going to talk about it any more than what I've already said. But what I will say is I don't really get the mentality here. I really don't. I really wish that alongside patch notes, Valve would also just have like a separate blog where they discuss like why they made these changes, what their mentality was to the changes, what they're looking at for the future. Like, hey, we made this change, we're going to see how it goes. If it doesn't do what we think it should do, then, you know, we might move in this direction. Instead, we just kind of want to see how it plays out. Just give us some idea on what your mentality is on why you're making the changes that you're making, because basically a lot of changes just leads us scratching our heads and making assumptions about what we think you're doing. And so it doesn't help us at all. In fact, it just gives you a lot of negative flack when you're not able to explain yourself. And if you can't explain yourself, then maybe you shouldn't be making the change. It's just one of those things where I wish I would at least have some idea on what Valve is thinking when they make these changes, because to me, yes, nerfing the Tech 9 was apparent. Needed to be done. I don't think they did it enough. But nerfing the op, I don't get why. No one in the professional community was calling for it. And let me tell you this, and this is like another just side rant really quick, and I'll probably kind of leave on this note, although I do want to talk about map tweaks just a slight bit before I turn the video off. It's like, I don't know what data they're using to make these changes, I guess was what I was trying to get at. You know, if the professional community's not calling for an op nerf, then where is this coming from? Where is the data coming from that caused you to think you need to nerf the op? And if it's coming from matchmaking data, then that's total shit. Like, matchmaking data should be completely eliminated from Valve's train of thought when they're patching the game. Because guess what? Like, the changes that you make are going to be exploited the most at the top level of play. That's where the game breakingness of your changes are going to be discovered. And you don't need to break the game at the top level just to fix something in matchmaking or something like that. Like, it's just stupid. If that's the case, then just have patches that only affect matchmaking but don't affect like competitive play or something like that. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make any sense why you would do that. It doesn't make any sense why you should adjust the game to cater to the bottom instead of the top. Like, you should cater to the top, and then it trickles down, and people just have to get used to it at the bottom. Because guess what? The game-breaking things that you feel are game-breaking in the game because you're, you know, a freaking gold Nova player or silver player or, you know, DMG, whatever rank you are, and you feel like something's really broken, needs to be changed because you can't get past that wall. No, it's not because you can't get past that wall. It's because you suck at the game in comparison to, like, the top-level players. It's just the bottom line. Like, the challenges and obstacles that you are facing, it's not because the obstacles are broken, it's because you are. You get my point? And so I don't understand why you would think that you need to change something just because people are having a tough time with it in matchmaking. They're playing at a much lesser level of skill in the game, and so obviously they're going to have a tougher time dealing with certain things because of that. And that doesn't mean you should change that. It means that those players just need to learn and get better. You don't break the game or handicap the top level of play to cater to that. I don't know if that's what it is or not. It seems that way to me. You know, it seems that, you know, some of us also make it more spectator friendly. Like, people always say, oh, it's not interesting whenever someone wins first round and is guaranteed the next two rounds are going to go to that team, it's going to be a 3-0. That's boring. I don't even feel like watching those two rounds because the other team doesn't really seem to have much of a chance. And so you have like this buffing of pistols, you know, like to CZ, like to Tech 9, to give players a chance to win second rounds. And that's just total shit, because I think you had plenty of chance to still win the second round because of the P250 or something like that. So it just doesn't make any sense to me why you felt that you need to buff the Tech 9 or the CZ to make it more effective to allow for a better chance to win second round. At that point, you're just ruining the whole idea of an economic system in Counter-Strike. People are supposed to be rewarded rewarded for winning those rounds. People are supposed to be punished by having to save, and now teams really don't even have to save because they can just buy up Tech 9s and Scouts and 5.7s or whatever else second round, and they're not even really saving. And then when you think that, like in the middle of a half, when a team's won a bunch of rounds in a row and it's forced a team to save or something like that, or broken their money, they can just come right back at you with Tech 9s and win a round. And it's just like, no one's getting punished for losing. No one's really getting rewarded for winning. And so the economic system of the game is just being bastardized. It's just not being as much of an effect as it should be. And it just doesn't make any sense to me, man. Like, you're just ruining the whole economic aspect of the game by saying that they should have a better chance to win these eco rounds. No, they shouldn't. They should be getting punished for losing. They should have to save and then try to come back the next time around. Like, that is what it is. And I think that even, I mean, the 250 is still very strong at $300 to get some kills here or there and still give your a team a chance to win the round. You know, a proper strategy and good smoke and flash placement and, you know, the power of the 250, or even just some slight nerfs of the Tech 9 and 5.7 to make it, you know, at $500, give you a chance, but not like ridiculously blow it out of proportion, I think you'd still be fine to make some interesting rounds. If anything, it'd be even more interesting when a team wins an eco round when they have to do it under such adversity. You know, it makes it even more of an accomplishment. It makes it even more rewarding to watch. So, you know, I just don't understand that there. I mean, that's just like kind of a big issue I've always had. And it seems like some of these updates are tailored towards matchmaking data, and those change. Like, matchmaking is not a very good data pool. It's not a very good data set. People are not playing the game the same way you see at professional levels of play, the way it should be played. People aren't nearly as skilled. You also have cheaters and griefers and other things going on in matchmaking that tamper with your pool. So unless you're just focusing on a particular skill group of matchmaking, even still there's all these other factors tampering with that pool. It just doesn't make any sense. I just been having a tough time trying to figure this out. I use Tech 9 and the CZ as an example, but you could go on and on about this. Now, when it comes to map tweaks, it seems like Valve's been more receptive, like we've already talked about Train. When it comes to some of the other maps, they've done some great optimizations to Mirage and Overpass on this latest patch, which are great. It seems like Cobblestone is being shaped up to be a better, more balanced map, when it used to be just way too CT-sided like Nuke. Now it seems to be being a bit more balanced. In fact, I've been seeing some matches that have drifted more T-sided. You know, you look at Copenhagen games, you know, the Virtus Pro TSM game, T-side was winning more rounds than the CT side in that game. You look at Gfinity Spring Masters, when Cloud9 played Virtus Pro, the T-side on that game was winning the majority of the rounds. You've also seen just more balanced play ever since that big patch to the map in mid-February. And so it seems like Cobblestone is finally shaping up to get to a competitive level. And Overpass is being optimized really, really well. This A-bomb side tweak lately has been really great. Cache is being optimized still with visibility issues and things like that. So the map tweaks from this patch are actually really good. I think the Dust 2 skybox thing is debatable. Some people seem to like it, some people seem not to like it. For example, some people complain that now CTs can stack cat and just smoke long A doors from CT spawn, and you can really punish terrorists that way. It might be OP. I haven't really seen that done a whole lot yet, but yes, that is a possibility. People used to do that in Counter-Strike Source sometimes. So the opening skyboxes definitely does open more options for CTs to like be able to throw nades and smokes from like cat to long and things like that. So being able to keep a presence at long while stacking cat or whatever. But it does also give terrorist options to throw certain flashes from like T spawn into cat to flash players up cat. That may be more effective pop flashes than pop flashing from lower B tons or mid or whatever. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I think the skybox thing at Dust 2 is debatable on whether it's good or bad. I think it's kind of neutral. I think it opens up options for both sides, but maybe this we'll find that the CTs have more options and they exploit them better, and so it kind of affects map balance. We'll have to see. It's hard to tell. Like I said, this patch is only like a week old, so we'll have to see how it develops. But that's just kind of a partial rant and a partial analysis of the patch, and I'll do this with future patches as well, the ones that seem to have like the biggest change to the game. And maybe I'll be able to be a bit more narrow with my focus as well if it's like a patch that focuses on just one thing, and I can just focus in on that one thing. We'll see. But this is just kind of a mini rant and then kind of a discussion on the latest patch to the game from March 31st. So thanks. If you enjoyed yourself, follow and subscribe, and look out for more videos.